أنا مخبد أسريتيفيش لما لو خن بشيني وتنتي بعصرتها يون من خيا مد ملبانا يعقوب ماوز الديلي من أطرد إسرائيل من تل أبيب بعصرتها بادغ بعض أطراي ديلي بخاي جو إسرائيل بعض تشعيت دي بعض عادتيات دي بعض محمات لشانة وخيوت دي وهذا يقرأ يعقوب ملبانا شلام علوخ شلوم تل أبيب مخدي أمري
שלום, שלמה, מירושלים, איתה מחודשתה גו ישראל, אנא סקינה גו ירושלים, לגו תל אביב.
פחלת.
ויין יאון שלמה לך, כולו התוראי בדוניה, וכולו התוראי דפישלו, ארד ארד, חלת עליה, כולם דרך, ארד ארד ובנחלה, ומקימחלה, ושאלנך הנך, independent state, ديان خالد إلا
هاو ترابا بسيمة ملبانا يعقوب لنتنيات بسيمة ومبسيخانة تشورايد عادي خرزة بخلت لمديتا خلط لي دوسوتا إيوت من خيم من مديتا أورشليم من يروشليم يدوخ لشانة يورايا ولشانة أتسورت إلى ترى شان شيماي اد ديل رابا قريب الغدادي ملبانا بقاريو قماي بهاوي رش برسو بديوخ إبوخ قمايوتا يدت لجانوخ تا خزيان ديان يدنو لختيا مقامدانا جو أطرد السويدن خوشاوي ودوالوخا لومادا ودوالوخا دوراشا تاما بس مفرجان ديان الديلة جو فرنسا وطرواتها خينة يوروب لدي رابع من ديانة رش أطراي ديلة بخاية جو أطرد إسرائيل إبخب قميوتا يدت لجانو ختم فرجان ديان مني ليعقوب ماوز
مخلطة من كلهم أنا إيش ما سنم زمن لشان إنجليزناي بسطاي دانا أمزم ما خدش بجليشان ديان. Okay? I born in Israel in Jerusalem, but my family came from the land of Ashur in the year of 51. My parents came from there, my mom from Zachor, and my dad from Dohok, Nohadra, and my sister Samira born in Zachor as well. And then they came over here in 51, and we rebuilt our life in Israel. Israel was a very poor country, very, very poor. And we had, at the very beginning, a big fight against 22 Arab states that they had only one goal, to eliminate Israel from the land. You know, the Iranians now repeating the same rhetoric, okay? Mm-hmm. That with our faith and our ideology, you can come over here to Israel. Hopefully, we will meet here in Jerusalem, and you see the huge miracle of our modern state, modern society, democratic, high-tech, medicine, agriculture, everything is in the same level and sometimes more than Europe and America.
ملبانا إبوخ ما إبوخ منتلن رش تشعيتا الزون خاتي اد أطراي الديلة بخايا جو أطرد إسرائيل كولت يلا من أطرد العراق إن إتن خكمة من الديلات من دكان خينة
من كل دكان آثور من كل من أورمي من أكاري ومن عراق أنا لا بين أمر عراق أنا this is a fake state. No, this is Ashur. This is our land, from Syria and from everywhere. At the time we came over here, about 100,000 people. And now we are about 500,000 Jewish Assyrians by our origins. So this is a huge power that can join the Assyrian nation in the main goal to get back to the country and to rebuild the state.
بما شتتل ملبانا من آشور شتدل بودشامو أربيوت من يكيم بشم شتيسا أطرد إسرائيل هر أجتل أطرايد التوديت هديت بمروخ لأطرد إسرائيل
احنا نتكلم بالستوى 50-50. A short time after the establishment of the State of Israel, and a very short time after our independent war, right after we expelled from at least my community, my parents' community, expelled from Iraq, my parents' community, expelled from Iraq, and they robbed our property, our money, our houses, our jobs, and we came over here only by, with our clothes and one blanket for my baby sister, okay? That's what happened.
ملبانا إبوخ متخيلت لن ما هو أسقواتا difficulties أن بش أننقاي الدوزونا كم تيلي يمخو بابوخ مثلا من أطرا إسرائيل دخ غزيلة دكتا كاليوا دخ غزيلة خشولة جو أطرا إسرائيل ودخ بنيالة خيوتة دي جو أطرا إسرائيل
دوزوتا لا ثوا لا شولا لا زوز مخ فقيرة واخد مخ فقيرة plus, the Arab attacks against us. And this time we had no borders. And the Fadayin attacked us, on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, since then, since 48, until up to date, the attacks are going on against us almost every day. But now we are strong. This time, when my parents came over here, they lived in a camp, like refugees. And no work. My father bought a donkey to work on, and the income was Porsche. I don't know how to say it exactly. This is one sort of difficulty. The other was cultural. Look, we came to Israel with a piece of gold in our hand, and nobody appreciated it. Even ourselves had not the power to appreciate this piece of gold in our hand. This piece of gold is our language. We are the only community that preserved the original language since about 3,000 years. The same language that our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov spoke. Then when we came over here, the people that came from Europe just before us tagged us as Kurdish, and we agreed, and it was disaster that accompanied us for 70 years.
Yes. Could you say to us how many Assyrians live today in Israel, and where are they? In which towns they are established?
Well, we have no statistics, but I assume that we have at least 500,000 people, descendants of the original Jewish Assyrians.
500,000 of people of Assyrians in Israel?
Right.
It's
and
a lot of people.
I can meet many people. Our speaker, the head of the Knesset, our parliament, came from Gzira. you should know it. Yeah. You know Turkey.
How they call themselves?
Well, we have
their language. How they call the language they use in daily life.
Well, this is the tragedy, and as I told you, we lost a piece of gold that we had in our hand because we called our language Kurdish, and we called ourselves Kurds. And this is the tragedy because if we knew to appreciate our culture, we were able to preserve this cultural treasure, language and the culture. Yes, but you asked me where do they live? Well, we have a huge community here in Jerusalem, a huge neighborhood. But the other, all over the country, Israel is a very tiny country. We have villages south, very close to Lebanon, by the way, on the border of Lebanon. Some of them live. And some of them nearby the border of Gaza. So we feel very comfortable with our neighbors, with Hezbollah and with Hamas.
Do we have Assyrians in Gaza or in the Palestinian territory?
As far as I know, nothing, zero. Zero. I think this is a very unique phenomenon that there are Assyrians, non-Christian in the world, only the Jews. It is very unique.
What kind of jobs do they for living in Israel, our Assyrians?
Well, at this time, like every other people, but when we came to Israel, it was a massive building, and we were very good constructors. Until today, we have some constructors, huge companies in Israel, huge companies. Deal with constructions.
About the language, are the old people only speaking Assyrians, or the young people speak also the Assyrian language?
Well, the bad news are that I belong to the last generation that able to speak a little bit Syrian. And the next generation, not. So the meaning is that we are going to lose our language. And it's not only a language, this is a language and culture and identity. We are going to lose a significant piece of ourselves. And that's what motivated me to act.
I see, I often see on Facebook that you are making some interviews with old people. They speak about their past life in Assyria or in other countries, in other towns. How do you do to save these records, and why it is important for you to record these interviews with the old people of our community in Israel?
Look, in order to let the next generation enjoy this language and culture, we must use technology. So I'm running from house to house to interview the last people that are able to tell me what's going on when they were young in the land of Asher. Okay, so this is the first goal and the most important goal. Okay, I'm a company of one person. okay? I'm doing everything. I'm doing the interview, I'm editing the videos, and I'm posting them, I'm responding to the people, and so on. Mm-hmm. But the other goal is to correct our identity, because we carry an untrue identity for 70 years. By that we are calling ourselves Kurds. It's crazy. We are not Kurds. Kurds are Muslims. We are Jews. Okay? Kurds has a Hindu-European language. We have Semitic language. Okay? We believe in the Bible, like the Assyrian. The same Bible, okay? So what do we have to do with Kurds? Nothing. By the time that we have the Assyrian people, that we know them since 3,000 years, okay? Not everything was pleasant. It must be said that the Assyrian Empire took us to the Galuta, okay, to Assyria. It was, through a war. But look, about 2,600 years passed since then. We have, telling you honestly, the last minutes to make a correction, to rebuild the bridge between our two nations, to correct our identities, okay? And to start to celebrate our identity, our common identity. There is no any other nation in all over the world that is so close to the Jewish nation, but the Ashur nation, okay? And if you take only 2-3 classes in Hebrew, you can find easily how close is the Hebrew to the Syrian and to the Syrian as well. And you know what? You preserved some words that we lost from our country. Mm-hmm. So we need each other.
Yeah. What about the learning of the Assyrian language in the official schools? Is it possible to take some initiatives to make possible the learning of the Assyrian language in the schools?
Well, it's like a huge project. It's not easy to get into the curriculum to add the topics, but I don't give up. I'm now trying to create a lobby in our parliament in order to let the kids learn this culture, because we call this language Armit. I use only the Hebrew version of this word. I'm calling it Aramit Ashurit. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we need to learn it because, if you go to a synagogue, every synagogue you like, even in Paris, okay? You can go to St. Paul, knock on the door, to a certain synagogue, Ashkenazic, European synagogue, and you can ask the rabbi, can you open your prayer book in the prayer of Kaddish? He would let you see, yes, and you can ask him in what language this Kaddish is written. He would tell you that this is Aramit. And we are reading Kaddish every day, maybe 10 times in your language. That is our language. Okay? So it's only a symbol how deep is your culture is in our culture. And I'm telling you, most of the Israelis and most of the Assyrians can't imagine how close we are. And we must join forces, you and me, to change the mind of our people. We have an historical opportunity and we must take an advantage of it.
Concerning this lobby efforts, how are your relations with the Israeli state about promoting the activities of the Assyrian language? Do they support your efforts in this aim?
Well, at this stage, our government doesn't care. This is the good news and the bad news. If they care too much, they can help, but they can disturb us. It depends what is the agenda. Now, what I think is that when it will be an issue in Israel, I'm completely sure that the question of Kurdistan will raise. Why? Because we have good relations with the KRG, with the Kurdish regime. Okay, and what I like to do here is not to oppose the Kurds. I think I have no chance to do that, but try to affect the Kurds through our government to ease the life of the remaining Assyrians in the land of Ashur, at least. Okay? And then to join forces in the Western world, because we are Israelis every day under attack in the campuses, in the BDS, in the markets, everywhere. We became the big Satan. Okay?
You established some relations with the Syrian diaspora also. Do you think that the Syrian people outside of Assyria, you talked about the Syrian communities living in America, Australia, Europe. Do you think that these Assyrian communities support your efforts to preserve, to save the Assyrian heritage and language in Israel?
I must tell you something personal. And since about 3 years ago, when I started in this initiation, since then I have many Assyrians, brothers and sisters. I mean, we get so close. One of them is your friend from Stockholm, Dimcha Elia.
Yeah.
That he brought me to the Assyria TV, thanks to him. But I have many from Chicago, from Detroit, from California, from Sydney, Melbourne, Europe, everywhere, Greece, Turkey, just name it. So it's a real personal profit of mine. So I recommend it to every Israeli and Assyrian, just jump to the pool. I believe you will gain many friends, and it would open to you many worlds, new worlds.
Mm-hmm.
But in general terms, they support. I had the privilege to visit them in some places, Stockholm, Chicago, Detroit, what else? I forgot. Germany as well, Wiesbaden. I took part with the Assyrian parliament in the second meeting. I had the privilege to host them here in Jerusalem more than one time. I ran the conference, an international conference, and they came from Australia, Rabbi Hermes Shaheen, David, Juliana Timorazi from Chicago, and Mincha, and Raymond Lazar, and who else? The big scholar, Dr. Nicholas Algilu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Malpana, did you try to establish some official structures like Shotaputa? I know that you had the project to create a sort of embassy, an Assyrian embassy in Jerusalem. Could you talk us about your efforts to create an official structure to make all that projects possible?
Yeah, I'll tell you something. I have the hope that I can raise funds from the Syrian communities in the world in order to open an office and a cultural house here in Israel, in Jerusalem, that I would call it the Assyrian Embassy in Jerusalem. In fact, I'm your ambassador in Jerusalem. I'm doing it every day. Now, my office is in my salon. You can see it here. This is my office, okay? But I hope in the future I can raise money and to make it something more significant, more systematic, more professional, and to start to affect the Israeli society, to get more and more close to the Assyrian society, and just to go forward by bigger steps. Now it's a little bit on a low file. Okay.
Malpana, we have some questions from our viewers also, and they are asking. We have a question about the Syrian in Israel, even if they call themselves Arameans. Do you have some relations with the Syrian of Bethlehem or other parts of Israel or Palestine?
Okay, we have a pretty big community in the north, in a village called Jish. Okay? They are Maronites originally from Syria, Lebanon, and their language is Syrian. And we're friends, that's for sure. But I must tell you that I experienced some conflicts between Christians, and I know the Syrian part in Israel is a little bit opposed my project to get close to the Assyrians. Okay? And I'm trying to convince them that we are all one, and we have one goal, and we have one enemy. The number of Christians in the Middle East is reducing day by day. And in Israel and in the Palestinian Authority as well. need to strengthen them. We need to join forces together. And I have a long discussion with their leaders. One of the prominent figure is Shadi Khalul. Okay, Shadi Khalul is a real mensch, okay? And he is taking part in the Israeli politics, and he served at the army as an officer. He is a real Zionist. So he has a huge background, a good background. He should be my partner. It's an ongoing dialogue. It takes time.
Malpana, we have to discuss about some political issues also. And the first question about this, these political issues will concern firstly the Syrian genocide. Seifo, what do you think about the position of the state of Israel about this issue? Why don't Israel recognize the Assyrian genocide of 1915?
Well, until 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago, not a single Israeli knew about this genocide. We had no idea. So my first goal was to let the Israeli people at least to know that a genocide happened by the Turks and the Kurds against the Assyrian nation at the year in 1950 and on, in parallel to the Armenian genocide. Nobody knows. Okay? So this is one. Now, I hope that more and more Israelis know that something bad happened. I'm always posting in Facebook, YouTube, everywhere on this issue. Okay? And one of my first steps to do here, in this context, 2 years ago, is to make a ceremony of Yom HaTzahadeh. For the first time in our history. You can see it in YouTube. Okay. That time I had no much information about Israel nation. I do that. Why? Because Israeli know how to appreciate the fallen soldiers and defenders. This is a central part of our identity, of our narrative. Okay, we have every month a Memorial Day, every month for something. Okay, and hopefully, more and more people will identify with this. And my goal is at least to make a decision in our parliament. At least a declaration, not a decision, not a law, at least a declaration on behalf of this genocide. But our problem is our partners. One, the KRG, the Kurdish, because I'm blaming the Kurds. This genocide, it's open everywhere. Okay? I'm sure I'm persona non grata in Assyrian that is under the KRG. And the second is the Turkish. I blame them in this crime. Okay? We must point them and to show everyone here who are our partners. Okay? Now, in this time, Erdogan is the the leader of Turkey. And as you well know, he hates us. So why shouldn't we give him a reduction? This is the time to recognize the Assyrian genocide happened by the two criminals, the Kurds and the Turkish.
Malpana, did you establish some relations, some contacts with the Knesset members about the recognition of the Assyrian genocide? Do you really think that the Knesset will one day recognize it?
Look, we must be patient, but we must go on every day. But it would take time. I know why. Because it is so difficult to recognize the Armenian genocide that, every Memorial Day, every Armenian Memorial Day, many Jewish Israelis are going to the church and showing the sermon. We are identifying and we support the Armenians, okay? In spite of it takes time and nobody in the Knesset is there, to speak on it. But I think the recent years changed a little bit the approach to Turkey. And I think this is the opportunity. And once they will get started in a new activity, I will take an advantage and jump to the wagon as well. And I have some member of Knesset that already know. One of them came from a Syrian family.
Mm-hmm. The second issue about the political relations with the state of Israel concerns the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan in Karabakh. You know that about 10 Assyrian soldiers lost their lives in this war. What do you think about here also the position of the state of Israel? Why did the Israeli government decided to support the Azerbaijan power against the Armenia?
Yeah, first I must say I feel sorry for this Assyrian soldier fallen there, and I feel sorry for the Armenians as well, because they are lovely people, and they are Christians, and I know we are living in an ocean, an Islamic ocean, okay? And we have some islands. One of them is Israel, the second is Armenia. Not too many. But the context is that there is a superpower like Iran that declaring every day that they like to eliminate Israel totally. And they develop a nuclear weapon against us. Now the game is like that. Azerbaijan is against Iran. Therefore, we are there to sit on the Iranian border. And we are sitting in the Iranian border, at the same way that the Iranians sitting in the Syrian border to Israel. Okay? It's a balance. Okay, so therefore we need Azerbaijan. To my sorry, Azerbaijan opened a war against Armenia. We have no active part in this war. But yes, we are selling a weapon to the war. Okay, we are producing the best high-tech weapon here in Israel, the best in the world, okay? And they are buying it. What can we do? But keep in mind, by the time that Azerbaijan opened a war against Armenia, Iran support Armenia. And don't forget, please, our first problem, the problem number one now in Israel is Iran.
Mm-hmm. Malpana, I have a last question to ask you. How do you see the future of the Assyrian community in Israel? Do you dream about to return one day to Assyria? Do you think that it is possible to Assyrian Jews to come back to Assyria, or you think that your life is now in Israel for new times, the new era?
Look, when we were sitting on the river of Babylon, there is a song, a well-known song, by the river of Babylon. We cried, when this day will come that we get back to our country. We love our country, we are Zionists, and we had a historical privilege to rebuild our life in our country. Israel becoming one of the leading countries in the world by high-tech, by agriculture, by medicine, everything. We had a very good life here, okay? Except the wars with the Arabs and Palestinians, okay? So we had no intention to get back to the lands that we left 70, 80 years ago. But I must tell you that I would be the first to have the Assyrian passport in my hand. and this is, I'm telling you, I'm dreaming about it. And I'm wishing you, and I will do my best to support the Assyrian nation to get back to its country and to rebuild the state and their life. And Israel has a mission, a huge mission to help you. It's not a human decision. This is God's decision. Why? Because we know the verses from Isaiah. Israel should be the third to Egypt and Assyria, and to be blessed for the world. This is our destiny. We must fulfill it. Time has come.
هاو ترابا بسيما ملبانا لكل بناي كل جواب دولو خل بقارة ديانا أسيريا تيفي يطبق بخلطة من مفرجانة من يشقان أسيريا تيفي أد بشلن أصية أد أدخل عادي تبقت بلشان إنجليسنايا شد للشان إنجليسايا دي رابا سباي بس لزمتها وطالنا شغلوخ إيديتا موضعنوتا رش خيوتا دبني عمن دي لبخايا جواترد إسرائيل بماطوخ بمطاي وخل خوتامد خرزديا بس كبن ختموخ بلشانة سورة ملبانا ما كبت أمرت ما مساج كبت ممتد تعاطرايا ديلا بخايا رش أراد بيت نهرين ورش وتعاطرايا ديلا بخايا جو جالوتا.
أنا بس باين أمر اتلخون خاونتا قباطا اتلا تشعيتا قوتا خيلاني وقتوخون لزد ايتون من هيشخا قارك ديريتون الأرد يوخون فانتولا لشوخوتو لتنخراية. اوكي؟ وانا as much as I can, أنا بوزن كود مندي هيرنهم وين كل مدينة مدينة إسرائيل هيرالهم أختوهم جرك هيرتوا لي قد هيرنهم على بروح لهم من يروشلم
هاوترابه بسیمه ملپانا یعقوب ماوز اد شوتپلو خدم شرکلو خل عادی خرزه دیلنایا اد امتو جالوتا اد مقرولي تفرجان ديان من مدينة باريس وهم يخوا من خيا من مدينة مقدس اد اورشليم من اطرد اسرائيل يطلب من على منتيتا الكل بالخانة الديوة بوادا جواترد إسرائيل المحميتا والانطرتا اد إيتوتا ودهيايوتا أطوريتا تاما